Oh my gosh. I have to restart. Oh my gosh, everything's wacky. Computer's a little slow. Um, I'll just go with that. Those are decoy streams. Um, YouTube's using the new system, and it's a little weird, frozen, glitchy, half unusable. It works. It's just crappy. All right. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Let me check my sound. Sounds all right. Figfrin Hippus 35Y. Um, or a bunch of spam letters. Targeted individual program. I don't think that's really possible to be explained at this point. It's kind of like saying what's happening with all these crazy thoughts, certain things that happen, and why do people do certain things? Who's doing that? Who's doing it to us? And what are we going through? It's extremely complex, and sorry if the volume's low. I'll turn it up a little bit. It's extremely complex, and usually we're going to end up, if we kind of talk about that without knowing what we're talking about in each particular situation, we're just going to end up guessing, and it's going to do more confusing than it is going to do actual explaining. Excuse me. Of course, my throat's going to dry out now. And so on. And there's a lot of information about that, but I just would say that it's not something that we should really worry about, at least not in the sense that people either think we should or want us to, or want themselves or go through it. There's a lot better things to know and do, even if things are going on, and the little scale of what we think on like these little skirmishes of a mental emotional interactions is it's like sand to the ocean or to the beach about compared to what's actually going on. These high level interactions that are like civilizations unto themselves versus one person bumping into another person or a team of people doing weird stuff. We're all learning. And as well, there's a system where we have to manage what we're doing, and that's got to be explained later, but we're managing the planet, if you want to call it that, moving through hyperspace, where we're going in time. And if our consciousness isn't all on the same page, it's like a firework without a fin or a tail or whatever. And so it's not making excuses or anything like that, or even really directly touching on that question, but all these things are happening at once. And so, just some people are doing weird things, or other people are feeling those weird things. That's like the most simplified version of what's actually happening. Almighty High Returns says true purpose is to square the circle, and no straight lines in nature. It's highly common, but as well, obviously, like not secretive, but it's metaphoric. You could say cult, but cult is, in my opinion, when you take that and then use it for weird, unconventional ways to achieve power or control over others that is against their will. And more so, that's darkness, but it leads into that in certain ways. And again, a cult as just hidden knowledge has nothing to do with that, any more than hiding yourself, putting clothes on has anything to do with stopping you from running around butt naked in stores. That's not what it is. And it's given me a error with the webcam, the wonderful, fantastic new YouTube whatever, and I'm sure it's real glitchy and messed up for whatever reason. It's YouTube's new system. So your consciousness is like it's not a circle, but it's like a flower. It's not really moving in a straight line unless it's moving in a straight line upwards, but that's basically its ascension pattern. So its tail through space-time is a straight line, but even that, it spirals through, and its embodiment is there are no straight lines almost. Even our bones, none of our bones are perfectly straight. And so we live in a world where everything is in motion like that, this geometric, mathematical fluctuation, but to maintain a kind of equilibrium, we desire not rigidity, we desire order, a centralized form of compartmentalized or incremental order that we can, I guess, understand and focus on at once. And if there were ever this kind of a quantum expansive format of information, if we use the language, the communication we use now, we don't really have a way to explain those things. We just kind of run dry with words, trying to stumble over the same ideas. And so we come from this expanse, and our minds are like that, and they're very expanse, like flowers, no straight lines, from one moment to the next, from one thought, whatever. But to be able to function with so many people, with so many variables, there has to be an order. 50 people in a room trying to all get the same food from the same vendor or something like that shows how we need order. So in a world where it's almost indefinite the amount of change that can occur, we develop this wondrous sense of just amplified astonishment. And honestly, that's like a deer. I don't want to get like too, again, occult, but when we give into that, it's the same thing the monkeys and the animals do. They're always in astonishment or fear or confusion. Not always, but in our world, in our complex world. And so we're in our world, but we're still susceptible to that. And so we try to put these little tack points up to make this grid where we can have everything moving in straight lines and ordered. And that works, but that feeds this sense of how we control the world. It doesn't feed the flowering sense of mind and emotion that we truly are. And so we have to have this flux and balance. And so if you have a circle and a square, and if you can combine them in a way that brings them together into a stabilized geometric form, meaning stabilized, say it was a physical form and you put weight on it, it holds the weight. Say it's an informational construct and it has to fluctuate and change, it is capable of fluctuating and changing and maintaining its continuous form or shape or geometry. And if there are angles or changes that are required, but there are no angles or, say, even straight lines to contain that, it's, again, like a firework without the tail, or a fractal, one of those programs that creates the fractals with no parameters on it and just goes forever. And if that's our minds, it means we get lost in a maze of information. And as you can see, we've been building up more information, and some get it and some don't, and it's not like they get everything or they don't get anything. It's this threshold of how you're going to cope with what's happening, and we're in the same boundary system. The people who don't get it and the people who do, we're never going to be interacting in the same system where the people who don't get it all the way and people who do get it all the way and become kind of like different, not beings, but have access to different realities. It would never be that they would be forced to see it and they would be forced to not see it. Even now, that's what's happening, but you can't force people to see it, and you truly can't force people to not see it. And so it's all about kind of communicating and mapping out what we can do, and ultimately making a shape of our collective consciousness, probably like the brain, how the earlier brains didn't have as many details, didn't have as many folds and creases. I can't remember the word for that when they advance in the folds and all that. And now our collective fractal consciousness has enough facets in it where we can come together to the same point from different angles and not clash, not have to bump into each other. The geometry can explain that, can allow for that. It can unfold and unfurl and go back like a geometric shape that's designed to do that. We don't have words for that. A foldy, fractal, dodecahedron, square, a box, jack-in-the-box, soul thing. but you know that through feeling, and you know that when that gets suppressed, you feel less, or you feel suffering. And so again, well, there's always that, because there's always people that don't get it, other people do. It's just the amount of distance between, so the size of the diameter of that projection, that plot on the graph that we're making. And again, if it's too big, it's not going to be stabilized enough to really even have something bad to happen, because they won't even be able to communicate. Of course, we're all in the same place, and we should have a system that doesn't rely on our decoherence. But again, the way things have gone, we more or less have to know, and we have to get it. We have to get where we need to be mentally and emotionally. And to get there, with the amount of abuse that we've all had, a lot of times just being lied to, just being deceived by the media. Most of it is deceived by the media. They're going to go through mental, emotional vomiting sprees. And that's what happens. And that can't be changed. And if it is avoided, then it just happens later, or we get into a situation where you can't effectively do that, and we can never, ever actually get to where we need to go mentally, emotionally. So in a way, if people flip out, but there's no way of saying what's controlled and what's not, or what's expected and what's not. But in a way, people doing that is part of what's supposed to happen. It just has to be in that graph where the people freaking out the most and the people who get it all and don't need to do that the most can still trickle down and talk to somebody, and they'll connect, and we're on the same plane working together. Which is, that ripple is, it's like the bubble is rippling now. Like, where's it going to go? But it's us, so we can't just like disappear. It's not just going to go away, and it's not, even if it gets terrible, it's not just going to end. The problem's still going to be there. So honestly, it's exciting, because maybe we'll get to finally learn about ourselves and overcome these social problems, which are largely just kids going, oh, you're not the cool kids, and all these cool kids, and being like, yeah, punch him, or tell her she's whatever, and blah blah blah. And they're making people do mean things because they don't have anything better to do, and they failed 50 times. Anyway, which means it's not really a problem. We're gonna lose everything if we don't stop listening to stupid rich people that want us to burn everything down for their benefit and think that's going to be helpful, or fight the people that are doing that like that's going to help. Like brutally fight. Defending yourself, setting up boundaries, fine, but don't set up boundaries around their bonfire. It's crazy. Either way, again, part of that's supposed to happen, just has to be kept in the same equilibrium, if you will, which is, again, all good. It's not the worst thing that can happen. We're doing it to ourselves, and people can learn that way, and it's really not that bad. I still don't support, I don't want it to get any worse, and it could go much worse. Say something like the virus mutates. Well, I don't want to say that. The mind virus, you know what I mean? This intellectual thing that's been frothing from generation to generation through these devices and these inbuilt consciousness constructs that mitigate our intelligence. Something's happening in that, and it's changing, and it's either being exposed or being mitigated, or that's the same thing. And it I don't want to keep going into that, but everything could be a decoy, and then the next decoys could be something else. And so it's like, we always got to make sure we're not falling for the game playing that it's all a game and nobody cares, and we can just go crazy, go ham, and then pick up the pieces. We do that too much, we're not going to have another chance. And so and a lot of people think like, oh, it's all everybody that thinks they know stuff doesn't know. Well, that could be used against us, so let's keep our heads on straight. Yeah, the frequency changes what the square wave actually does. Changes square what a wave actually does. I'll have to look the comic book panel in the kind of preview slideshow for the intro. I have to look. There was a lot of, I get those from the Google engine, and I just put in certain words related to what I'm like looking at, and then go on a spree of clicking the images, and it gives me the images that are related to exactly what I'm looking for. Hopefully the audio is not still low. I'm going to be very angry if it was limited on the computer. Okay. Oh, I really hope it's not using the other audio. It was. That's so stupid. All right, let's see if I hate YouTube. Somebody tell me if my audio went back up. It wasn't even using my audio this whole time. YouTube is some garbage. Nah, it's all right. Damn. All right, I'm just gonna scroll down. Let me know if I'm either muted or did it come back onto the other audio. That's better. Okay, sorry. What the? They do that every time. Something I've never changed, never had to change, changes, and something new changes every time I go into it. What is your view on twin souls? And that's apparently Hallelujah. What is your view on twin souls and what Plato spoke of Zeus splitting humans? That's the thing. Same thing that's going on now. That was an earlier conceptualization, and it might be something that happened in the biological world, if you will, like in our minds and bodies as a metaphor. But as well, it's reflecting basically the creation of alters and temporal consciousness extensions that you would call a biological android. And the beginning of understanding what it is, the difference between the human and the... They're not androids. There's a word for them, like a duplicate or a simulacra, which I think simulacra is the reality version. I'm not sure. But that was related to that. Apparently, the philosophy behind the mind, basically a kind of like ontological nihilism, it is fitting more for another kind of humanoid than what you would call the true soul humanoids, which don't really need to ponder those things, in a way, or they ponder it differently. There's one's extremely mental and one that's not emotional, but capable of, again, geometrically tying the two together. That was like a tongue twister, into something that's compatible, and somebody all mental or all emotional can't either, not like a sumo wrestling, throw them off balance, but everything is basically balanced, and so they can see, and there are certain glitches that happen when we don't have that, certain issues we run into, and part of that kind of philosophical limbo of like what we are and what we're doing, what is state and what is power and authority and blah, 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 is part of not having a certain connection where it's all tied together. But as well, it relates to that time and who was here and what they were and what was being built then, and ultimately beginning of shaping people's minds. I don't want to ramble about it vaguely anymore, but there are non-human vampires on the planet. Galactic Fire, hi, much love. See, Noble. Quantum Coincidences, hello. Brickfinger, smashed thumbs up to assist the autistic algorithms. Algo bump. I don't know what that even means or what that's gonna do, because I think they're putting like mini algorithms for the autist algorithms or something. Coincidentally don't exist. It's a weird thing to say. I'm rambling now. This is what happens on the live stream. But coincidentally don't exist. It's just a weird phrase. It's like it can't exist even in itself. Ciarama, thank you. Hello, Shadow Walker. Hello, Michael7777. Okay. Sneed, I really hope others can hear me. Everybody else says it sounds great. Hopefully, I guess you'll be able to listen. Otherwise, pulsating motion, it never stops. It's mathematical and geometric. The mathematical geometry, waveform interaction, and all the other fancy words. That's how we understand consciousness. The finite numbers and little bits of interaction to demonstrate physical, like our observation of physics, is just a chain of distractions. The babies that are taught, their brains are formatted. I'm not supposed to talk about it. The brains are formatted from like a higher dimension. They know everything that our entire civilization knows after 90 years of schooling. and they're not using a genetic thing like like a reptiloid, like a snake does, where they pass on certain birds, they pass on their genetics. We're supposed to super learn. The baby brain have access to super learning everything, languages, space, time, physics, everything at once. So they say, hey, move the dial over there and draw the time that way and drop out the frequency here to get that. And then they're doing what people would do in a lab with big machines. Their minds aren't going to be able to necessarily do that, but they can run a simulation where they can do it in their head. And it's because of feeling how it works. Just like the simplistic forms of math where they reteach people how to do it, and you kind of like visually, mechanically do it in your head, and you can do huge, multiplication things that you normally need a calculator for just by learning how to look at it differently. Kind of a ramble, but most of what I've learned and trying to go back and use the information here to learn is that it doesn't work that way. And the way we're being taught, what we're being taught to think about, and how we're being taught to break it down and incrementally use that information as a language format to build knowledge, it makes gibberish, blah, 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 and it doesn't actually, and then you go blah, 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 and then they say you passed, and it doesn't actually help you. I'm sorry, but that's how it works. The only thing is the very, very highest level mathematics, and once you get to a point and they know you want to know, you'll know, and if not, you go into this public stuff, and that it doesn't teach you how it actually works. There was a brain drain. If you knew anything, if you know anything now, someone in your family in the past few generations was noted for your potential intellect, and it's already happened. Strange. But that brain drain occurred, and the majority of the people who would influence what's happening now were made note of and so on, or brought into it. Basically, if they had something to offer that was useful, it had to be used, and it had to be brought to this for the benefit of the people, because what else are we going to do in this time with these things going on? We need to do these things, and as well, if we get to a point where things are just different, the economy changes, whatever, we don't have the same access to the same problems. I mean, I tell you, if they gave everybody $1 million, nobody would be riding. They wouldn't care. And a lot of them would be dying from overdoses, and a lot of them even just driving a cool car too fast, and it's just too much power. But wherever any little bit of awareness, benefit, friendship, kindness, that can be used. But as well, don't let that be used as the bandit. Oh, I'm sorry. Go keep destroying things, or keep making use of me as a fool, or keep expecting me to destroy things and acting out because I'm going to now be happy that you let me do that. No, it's all a fool's game. Pay it into yourself. And all that is to be offered, we're all here. It's already happened. Stillness is pretty much the best, if you will. Throughout the beginning, throughout the middle. I really liked it in the beginning. Jeez. I really like it now, but it's like I don't want to be loud. It's just, and I know there's noise around, mental, emotional, informational, gossip or dialogue, but maybe, I don't know, the stillness is more needed now and 10 times as beneficial, but it's 3 or 4 or 5 times harder to achieve and harder to like embrace. So really it's more it's more valuable. It's like it was kind of low quality gold, or with contamination. And it's kind of like, now if you can get that stillness, it's pure. Now it's pure gold in this situation. And you do it enough, you're just going to forget about all the fighting and so on. And then it's going to get really weird. Thank you, Aaron Marlowe. Yeah. Sorry it hasn't been more, but the way things are, we have a schedule, and every soul is supposed to understand. And hopefully there will be stillness. Yeah. Here and now. Thank you. E.J. Wiley. I think I said that for the first time correctly. No, I think I said Wiley before. Anyway. Well, E.J. Wiley, so this doesn't apply to me because of the way you worded it. Okay, so do you and your crew have the tech and ability to use the tech to steal the thoughts from an Arcturian at the Arcturian's planet? If you want to place things into that context, which I don't know if I really, see things accurately in those contexts. Sure, it could be, but it's just what are the better ways to say these things? The way I understand it, tech to do anything can exist. Say we didn't want to have tech that could utilize quantum interactions to be able to read our minds, and we made computer brains for us, we'd be secure. But then we'd have computer brains, and if we'd have to have a metal shield, and it would be lasers and beams and this, that, and the other. And so tech can do anything. How society is beyond what we call the confines of this plane, space and time, that's a little bit more complex. It's a free-for-all. You can't do anything without the whole universe seeing and coming down on you. And it's free. So it's like, well, what is it really? Confusing. If you use tech to do something like that, eventually it would all come back to you. Eventually your mind itself would feel the repercussions of that. The quantum nature of consciousness. What you do influences others and goes up, kind of formulates itself as a reflective projection, and the amount of that that's decoherent, that's not aware of that, now comes back to you as extra weight, as a difference in the equation, and you have to deal with and work with it, or you carry around. All the place is designed to work that way. Loopholes. How do people get around loopholes? You can set up a club out in the middle of that whatever, and everybody in this gate, or whatever you want to call it, this circle, it's not even a gate, now is part of my club or this club or whatever it is, and we go by these rules. And it's fine because these rules count. And eventually you could twist all that and mess everyone's head up until you get in a system where they think they're in the place only place they're capable of being, the place they're supposed to be, the place they want to be, and the best place for them based upon the people that are communicating with them, basically, aka protecting them. You can do that and it will be absolute BS, but it will not last forever, and it's on you. Because again, tech can do anything. Tech could bring everybody that was ruined by that back here to do it right, and then if no one goes to war with that individual, no one cares. They literally walk away and go to the good timeline. Well, they're floating in hyperspace with no way to bridge back into a viable humanoid timeline, or a human timeline. A humanoid timeline is everything that they have. So it always comes back, but it's just then, before that happens, are you going to like do a flying ninja kamikaze jump and then get in a fray, and then now it's like an issue? We're seeing stuff like that happen. Where people they think they're throwing their bodies on the tracks in the gears, and they're literally, I don't even know the proper metaphor, they're literally throwing themselves into a conveyor belt that leads into a grinder. There is no train. There are no tracks. They think they're throwing themselves into the machine to stop it and grind up the gears, and it's a body grinder that they're being convinced to go into. And so it's confusing, but they're doing that again. It doesn't have to be as bad as we want it to be based upon how messed up it looks and how much more messed up it could be based upon whoever wants to get involved. We have to look at it like they don't know any better, and to stop they think they can't take it. I mean, I said this to a couple people, how much you've been stressed from these things going on. But we have a little bit of control where we're seeing this was supposed to happen. We were like bleeding from the eyes and mouth, like telling people this was going to happen. And so we see it differently. These people have no idea. They're like, we're doing this. This isn't happening. We're in control and we're doing this. And they think it's so bad that we're stopping this to save y'all. It's diluted, absolutely diluted, because it's not how it works. You don't go vigilante. You don't go violent. You don't do anything like that unless you're in a ring or you have a uniform on. And I hate to say it because, with the uniform you can do stuff. Yeah, because they're going to hack your ass if you mess up. That's the point. You're in military prison. And so on. But that's still happening. And so how can we defend ourselves against the tendency to get involved with that in a negative way? Based upon how I just said, you can think about it and learn. We don't need to cause more of a problem. And honestly, if we can ensure that they won't become so discouraged that they don't want to continue to wake up anymore, that's all that has to happen. Whatever happens beyond that will not stop everything from working out. And that's all that has to happen. That not right before, but it's not, you have to wake up 100%, turn around, start marching. You just have to basically try to be calm, be patient, and when the time comes, use intellect and information, ultimately knowledge, instead of emotions or violence. And we could probably do whatever we wanted. And as well, isn't that hard? It's the biggest game. It's the biggest trick. It's the biggest deception. It's like a war to help each other and say, what's really happening? Let's figure this out. Can we talk about this? Why are you mad? It's like a war. People are so angry, so mentally, messed up. What I was saying is they're so mentally abused from being lied to by the media mainly, that just realizing that, not, because of this happened in my life, because of that, because of these people, because of how I look, because of this place I grew up in, or blah, 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 or where I got to go now. Literally, from when we were born, when we were grown up, we were lied to. We were shaped. Our minds were turned against ourselves. And that is basically an act of war. It is the highest act of war on the planet. And that is what they're mad about. And that is crushing when you figure it out. And as well, it's kind of like, I hate to say it, that friggin' iPet Goat CGI whatever, where the girl's protesting. I think she has a flower tattoo on her face, something like that. He's protesting, and Death, with the scythe, turns around and grimaces in her face, not mad at her, not even hostile or angry, but just with the look that I eat you, like you're my food. And her face goes blank, she gets sad, drops her flower, and turns around. It's the same thing with the concept of the soldiers turning around. That's more or less now I have an excellent connection. That's more or less the intended effect of a kind of abusive, mentally emotional abusive system. If they go full on, and oh shoot, I forgot about that. I've noticed so many coincidences you can't imagine. You remember the iPet Goat video? They were rioting in the streets. All this played out, literally. So, and then there was more and more and more. And the other ones, I literally woke up and they're like disappeared from my head because it's too much if I say it. It's like there were certain coincidences where like if this and this and this and this is going to happen. And then people forgot about it because of the shows that are playing. But they told us this was going to happen. They literally said it word for word. And so these people are here trying. Death gives them that, and then they get discouraged. They haven't seen it. They haven't seen Death. When he turns around and looks at you, and he's 12 feet tall and whatever. And so the point is to not have them see that and then just get discouraged, because apparently if they do, then they're not going to get happy again, or they're not going to get that motivation. And it's because they're burning up their energy in a artificial situation. And again, they're supposed to, so it's like, I hate to say it, you got hotheads and you got kind of whatever and then lukewarm. The hotheads have to burn off enough steam that they're not going to threaten the lives of the lukewarm, but you can't go so low that the people who are kind of lower down never have a chance to rise back up. So it's this weird game, but it's not a game, and it's not even for benefit. It's for the people. It's a healing process, and if they don't go through that, it's just like getting sick and having to like throw it out or something or poop it out. If they don't, it stays and it rots and it changes their mind because they think about it and it becomes part of them, that energy. So the energy is being put into them. There has to be a way to constructively, creatively get it out. And again, part of that is the people who don't want to do that. Part of that is the trick, because it's just like the other system. I don't want to get too weird here, but it's like they're putting all the people of authority or of resistance against one another, and just whatever results is what's going to go on. And so the people who don't want to, it's kind of like they're the target in a sense. Just like the cops, or the police, are kind of. I mean, I know they know it. It's not cool. It's not cool what these youth are thinking and going through. So regardless, we're all still here, and we're watching that, and it's not as bad as it has to be, and it's part of a system, and they're going to be better when they wanted to get over it and communicate effectively, which also sounds kind of like strangely classist or something, but not really. Aaron Marlowe, could you go into some detail on what it means for a light or a system in general to be spiraling in nature? It's very simple. I'll run out of time in a little bit, but everything spirals. So as you have basically an electromagnetic pulse from a magnet. It's more like a standing wave, but it's happening at once. It's pushing energy outward in these undulations. Just like hot and cold, the magnetic fluctuations contributes to overall alignments in the geometries of whatever's emitting the field. A magnet with two poles, or electromagnets set up a circle or radial or whatever it is. The antenna with the kind of bidirectional, omnidirectional. It doesn't, so just like a wave in the ocean, but it's not physical particles, because you have a wave and you push a line of the water, or excuse me, you have a body of water, you push a line, it moves out in a longitudinal wave. I think that's the proper word. And so, is that the right? Anyway, I'm going to sit here and confuse myself over dyslexic word definitions. Why is there always two definitions of everything? And if you're dyslexic, you switch every definition. And so it moves outward, and if you put something in the way, or hot and cold, they will begin to spiral, or you really kind of diffuse, and if there's strict hot and cold, then they spiral. So a way of explaining it is that because it's in flux, even though it's moving through the air at the speed of light, there has to be an in and an out. To get an in and an out with something that's going up, you get an up and down. How are two things going to move past each other? Two forces. The spiral is the only way. They're not going to slide off in shear, like a landslide. They're going to remain intrinsic, meaning when they're moving, when they're churning like a landslide, it's because they're partially the same force occupying the same space at different phase in like a magnetic polarity. And so they're attached to each other conceptually in a way. So the magnetic field spirals because it's simultaneously going up and down at the same time. And that's a weird random 5-minute explanations, and as well, it's not necessarily the most difficult explanation, but it's kind of vague, and you can go so deep as to why trees spiral, because mathematically that's the only way to actually format them to get enough light. If they didn't spiral, they would be straight up. They would overlap. If their leaves weren't kind of architecturally unique, they wouldn't fold into each other like that unique fractal. If you look at the shadow and there's deciduous leaves, you see them fold into each other, but you still see all the outlines for the most part in between, because they fit and they share the light. In order to get so much in the same, they have to constructively co-inhabitate the same space, this same space. And to do that, you have to effectively, efficiently organize both motion and matter, which ultimately is energy. And that is a simplistic understanding of geometry, and the only shapes you can use to get that result in basically intrinsic spiral or spiral-like motion in out of themselves and in and unto each other's in the environment. And as well, the real reason, because space itself is bent, and you'd have to get a huge machine that watches the universe to understand that light literally shoots back out and comes back at a different time, because it's all one of the same systems. We're basically going out and coming back into ourselves because there's nowhere else to go. Weird thing about why spirals spiral in a not a scientific mathematical, but kind of like a subjective creative explanation as well. You can look into the mathematics and the geometry. It's because it is the only way it can be, is why things spiral. If it didn't, it would just one would blow out that way, something would hit, and instead of shifting the energy properly, we'd just have big explosions, and everything would just fall as dust. And it's really weird when you see that something's pumping everything, pumping up the jam. No, I'm just playing. And we're literally like oscillating because we're in a system that's giving us that power to do so. That lifeness is not even a static thing. It's happening from the ends of all creation, or whatever you want to call it, into the center all at once. And in other words, this isn't just sitting here. It's literally doing this and vibrating. And so take that and throw it that way. Well, it's going to vibrate and spiral that way. Anyway, it's more and more kind of rabbit hole type understandings, but the research and all that all touches on it. Thank you, Linus of Gaia. Is consciousness binary? Apparently not, and apparently it's not honestly holographic, but that is the easiest way to view it in a model, even a scale model. Apparently consciousness cannot be binary, because this is too deep. It's an envelope fractal fluctuation which folds into itself, and it's kind of like a projection that only exists from the perspective within itself, kind of like a dream. When you're in it, you're in it. On the outside, it's like, what was that? It's a bubble, and you're outside of it. Well, you're in one of those right now, and that's what your consciousness is. The system of linear start and finish, the tape begins and ends. It's inside that. Again, circle brain, we square it to make sense of it. We overlay a binary screen over this fractal flower, infinite depth and infinite contrast and infinite detail scope, and we put this contrasting limiting system and this color limiting system like blue blockers or something, and all of a sudden we can see a little bit of the depth. It blocks out enough of the contrast, the two hyperdelic over contrast, so we could see it turns into a 3D space where you can now interact in. It makes sense of what would otherwise be a splash of just everything, and all thing at once. And again, kind of like the spiral, we spiral and it sits here in spiral, so you can sit here and have it and say it's not spiraling. And so we have this expansive mind that has no end, and we put a fake beginning and end and draw and put lines and graph like on the paper so we can make sense of it and see it and use it better. But again, it's like the training wheels where they can get you upright, but if you try to go full speed, you can't do that with binary consciousness. It has to be holographic, which begins to interact in ways that are closer to something like a quantum system, where information exchanges instantly across the entirety of what you have as this informational holographic disk, or whatever you're going to consider the kind of outline of the human mind, and you put them together and you pull them apart, and every possible thing that could happen happened. It's not like computing where you have to code everything out. It's like computing where you have an AI system and you tell the AI system to wrap everything up and then do this, and it happens. And your consciousness is that system. The universe is the AI system. Your consciousness is a kind of player of that. And once you come to terms with that and understand that, then you can use that binary system to power this huge flower, fractal, gravitron, hyperdelic, whatever you want. And again, we come from whatever you want, you get. And it's too much. Because then coming to here where it's like, now we have paper and stuff and solid and blah, blah, let's write down all the stuff we created. It's too much. We can't even make sense of it. So we come down now to this. We don't come from the high and now we're over here somewhere in the stratosphere. It's still too crazy. We come all the way down to the ocean, maybe even the ocean floor, and we sleep there and we slowly float up, and then we get out of the water and we build stuff on land, and we can make sense of it one thing at a time, because if we just had everything, it would be billions and trillions and cosmos and this and before and after simultaneously, and we can't make sense of that. So again, it's the only way it works, but is that can we use that and say, well, the map doesn't go from here to here. I don't have binary consciousness to see what's going to happen here, or how I feel here, or what I should do here, or what's going to be over there, or where I came from, or anything. Can I get to that point without needing that map to show me? Can I see it inside myself without using that system? In other words, can you know what to do without using language? Can you think without language? Can you think without thought? Kind of weird. Can you be aware without thought? That's kind of the same thing. Can you remove the square while holding it kind of like a transparency over it, just to know where it could be if it needed to be? That's the game we're playing, and that's what we could be doing. And that's taking every possibility of what could happen in a situation, a store, a street, a school, a place, whatever, and running every possible simulation in your head at once through feeling and going, this is what I need to know. All that is, whatever. Not actually running through it, but you say what I need and feeling, and you have what I feel this is in the world, and your brain subconsciously goes through a linear million trillion process of simulations, and you know exactly what you're supposed to do and what needs to be, because you know the truth. In other words, truth is not binary. You can use the binary system to convey that truth to others in a linguistic manner that is controllable and stabilized, but you can't actually give truth to another. So it's like, well, what's the point? Well, what is the point? Electricity... Thoughts and perceptions out loud. Is electricity a huge part of manipulation? The manipulation. It is the manipulation. It's dirty electricity. Our systems have been dirty this whole time, and it literally bleeds into our cellular system and warps us and messes with our immune system extremely. It's literally like part of it. Like, the modern problems are from chemicals and crappy electronics. It's kind of like a bummer, if you will. But as well, there may be other kind of effects from people call galactic energy or whatever's going on, where these changes are going to happen to our systems, our DNA and everything, And it might just be something that was going to happen anyway, and we can blame it on whatever we want. If you want to freak out less, quick, look out there and then blame it on something, so you don't have to sit there and think about what is really going on. More or less, don't actually do that unless you want to. Brickfinger, we live in the slums areas of the systems. The luck our draws. Yes and no, because if you really put everything together, there is no slums, because it's all a thing where we're at the max, and then we descend down to determine what we know. And if we go too high, we can't really observe the grit to see and observe what we know and experience how good it is. And if we go too low, we forget what we even came from and muss around so long that we muck around or mess around, transpose that, so that we get stuck. And so, but then a bunch of people getting stuck, you could call that a slums. If you call that a slums, then yeah, that's what it was. But it doesn't mean that it's like it's not like the slums that we have in the physical, where, I mean, in a way it is, but it's a broken concept to have that. That's for perverts, not like you, but the people who designed the system for that, because we should all be living literally the same exact value. And if you do stupid stuff and it doesn't work for you, you're quantum shifted out of everyone's reality into your own, and you just do stupid stuff there. Instead of, well, we're all here, and then physically, because you're there, you're screwed. No, it's mind. And playing it like it's not is a disguise, and pushing it so it's like, but it's not really mind, it's just starting mind. Then you can do stuff, and afterwards you have the same opportunities. That's pushing it, because the only people that benefit from that are people who literally do stuff that you wouldn't want to know about and own all the money. So it's like, it's the same thing before. What about that? The people who are unhappy, the people who made the system are paying them to pretend. What? Think about it. Think about it. So we are in the deep end of the pool. That's more of what it is. You can call it a slum. It's really the ocean. You go down to the ocean, to the trench, you're going to find some stuff. You go down there, they're not going to think it's the slum. They're probably just going to try to eat you. But you probably couldn't get there anyway, so that's not mean to say. We're in a place where you could go there and they could eat you. Good luck trying to get down there. We're not supposed to. And it's supposed to be like that down there. And so, but now the fact that we have, maybe this is better than the slums, and some people from the slums came over here, and that's really what happened. Either way, don't want to get too... I don't know how long I've been. Let me see real quick. Okay, I can't see how long I've been. Oh no, I can. 47. Sorry, distracted. Make sure I'm not going too long. So Hurricane Leah. How do we make the masses see the MSM is lying to them and that we are sovereign beings of light? They'll see it anyway if this is all still here. Are we getting to a point where they're getting to a point where they'll never be able to see it? I was thinking about this earlier, and I've talked about this even in this chat in a few words. On another note, though, the only way I see this working is by using what our monkey brains gave us. Scribble on the pad, print out the stuff that says this is not effective for that. Show them pictures, if you will. It's kind of crappy. We got phones. Get a slideshow on your phone of all the pictures you save in this folder and say, look, it says it doesn't work. Look, they're not doing it. Look, they just made $1 billion. Look, there's no one there. Look, they just said it was 6%, not 240,000, whatever. That's the only thing that I can think of, because every other thing is get in their face or do something crazy or sit there and make them fight you or something like that. That has its own point, not fighting, but civil disobedience and saying this isn't right and you need to know that. And as well, if people are actually injured, okay, well, you don't want to know what happens after they get injured. That's an act of war. And again, people who injure themselves on stuff that they choose to do is different. But that's not, I don't handle that, and I can't really properly explain the lines of reason behind that. And so that's the only thing I can think of. As well, maybe the simple answer is be kind, be their friend, and try to literally nourish them enough to see the truth. Ultimately, they're afraid. They're all afraid. That's the only way you do that. They're extremely afraid, and they're very insecure, and they want to be seen one way, and they want to do it in a way that there is no threat against themselves, and there is no kind of conspicuous motivation, which is obviously corrupt because it's the most delusional and conspicuous thing ever. It's literally like the largest plan to hurt humans since they created bowls to put your kids in. But that's fine. Now, how is it going to work? How is it going to happen? That's the only thing I can think of. The media itself isn't going to do it. If they get shut down, if all that goes on, fine. That's that. If that happens, then you're already going to have your problem. They're going to be freaking out. They're not going to be rioting because they want cool stuff. And again, it's not about rioting. It's not about this or them. People are just doing what they're doing. When they see what's going on, they're doing that because they see what's going on. So imagine they see it's everywhere. It's not going to be that. It's going to be like rolling around, trying not to like suffocate under your own stress. And then the same thing is going to be that much more important. Being kind, letting them know what the truth is. Ultimately, it's like this. You have to be kind enough to not make them feel afraid because they're afraid, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. But you have to be strong enough to not let them act delusionally and expect that to be true. And you have to let them know in a safe manner, and then you have to let it go. And in a month or a year, when the systems start to wind down, they'll be able to review those thoughts and understand what was going on, like a person who was blacked out drunk. Okay. And again, you can wake them up in the middle of sleepwalking, but it's going to be even more violent. What we can do is we wake up and support wholly and only wakefulness. Don't try and shut anything down. Support wakefulness. And also, don't support one wakefulness, their wakefulness. The idea of this is wakefulness. Support people waking up safely, calmly, happily, as much as you can be. Nobody wakes up happy, not in this place. And that's it. Anything else, you already know. What can we do? You know what you can do, crazy stuff, and it's just gonna make it worse. You can do anything, and you get them to do anything because they're reacting. I don't think they need to be poked and prodded so that they react. A lot of people are going to try that, and the people who do end up being poked and prodded that were not reacting this whole time are going to act, and then it's going to not happen anymore. But that doesn't need to be stressed or the meaning of this or anything. The meaning is to wake up. These are all side effects. Thank you, EJ Wiley. K-Fab under, let's say, Hedge Sten, Robbie Paulson. Do you support post-humanism and transhumanism? Heidi C. Priest. Okay. I don't think so. Whether it happens, like, as in post-humanism, we, like, this plane goes away and we, like, become something else because that's what happens, like, whatever, fine. Somebody wants to make you, it's not going to go well unless everyone on the planet gets a pamphlet and pictures of what you could become, and we see all the streams, live stream on every channel of what happened, and these people mutating and getting stuck in alternate dimensions of mind where you can't feel what a human feels, but you know you were. I'm not supposed to go into it. Not because it's like, whatever, it's just I'll go into a tangent that won't end. It'll become a sci-fi show. So I know the power and what can be done. I know the necessity in some situations for real technology that can heal and reconnect nerves and heal the brain, the mind. And I know that if we don't get to that, a lot of people would assume the next best thing is simply modifying your system so you're there. The only version of that I support is after you get to full awareness and your life is done. You're 18 years old as a spiritual, eternal being, and you know, and you can make all your decisions on yourself, meaning you've seen everything. If somebody comes and tries to say, "Hey, you want to join this?" and puts in, you make your own decision. And then, in the sense, there are systems that can be used to basically mentally, emotionally stress, test, shock, and then kind of like recalibrate your mind with pulsar generators, not pulsar, but they're pulse systems. Sorry, hand motion, and it's non-touch, and it can be brutal, and it can change memory, and so your mind can be mapped out, and that can be used to effectively mitigate whatever this is. Ultimately, we all have brain damage. If you've been in the program, not the Earth, if you've been in society, if you've been part of the program of society, it damages your brain. And when you get shown the truth, and when we can run through a field with advanced tech and heal and happy, we go, but wait, what? And we have this crazy thing that has to happen, and we have to get it all out of our system why we were so hurt. A lot of people, I'll say the no-touch system that doesn't go into you, and like now you're a part of that, but literally is as if somebody's teaching you how to think properly, but it's a system, trying to push your hormones and everything into a proper state so you're not freaking out. That is apparently beneficial or capable of more or less saving every human soul. And I'm talking not just like, I don't know, somebody who's out there doesn't even care. Just there's no way to get them to side with you. But if they see the truth, they'll understand. They're just completely uneducated. It's not for them. It will be okay for them. It's for the people who can't force themselves to accept and go back because they've been so hurt by the system or by experiences here. And in the sense, that's not posthumanism, transhumanism, but you could say in the strictest sense that the individual is no longer an organic human with an organic timeline mind and so on because a system artificially stimulated. What happens in the best way, and that's all I can really say, is you go through a kind of test system, which is an organic, real-life, real-time test, and it maps out all the aspects of your brain, all the aspects of your body, how hard you can push, what's your minimum, what's your maximum. And once it's proven, without a doubt, that you are 100% in alignment and in effect going to wake up, and absolutely your cells are reversing whatever entropy, and you're gaining a spiritual control system, aka the hyperdimensional time machine of the body, then you accelerate that with the systems, and it hurts even more, and it goes over, and you're still you. You take somebody that doesn't have that, and you do it. It creates somebody that's not who they were gonna be, and that's the idea I was trying to spit out. And then beyond that, you can have somebody who's a ice cream truck, disco ball, whatever, projector for a head, and they could do anything. You can have that. The people can be that. Is it right, or is it going to work out at the very least? Is there even a point to that? Y'all got to kind of understand and research and look into it, because if I say run and scream, it's the same as saying this is the future. When you see it, you'll see it and you'll understand. And as well, kind of why I'm saying that is because human has to be understood, and it will be kind of known to be, the definition we have is garbage, and it only works to confuse us. And there are multiple things, multiple changes, and what we are in ourselves, we have the power through our cellular system to achieve what you would expect, what you would think is a posthumanism, transhumanism power. That's the deception. The human is the beyond human. You just have to wake up. You don't need other stuff. Although, without relying on those things, other stuff can help. And as well, it can ruin everything and rot people's brains and turn them into things they're not supposed to be. Thoughts and perceptions out loud. I think the truth movements are actually part of the manipulation. You don't say. David V. Hey, Og. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Can you explain the blood types, especially where the RH bloodline comes from? I'm just going to tell you what we're briefed on. RH is apparently the newest. It may have been here before, but wasn't here. There is no other where. I'll just leave it at that. Every other bloodline is related to the first human experiments, I think 22 experiments, genetic experiments. And what I can say is, again, we don't know how everything works, because I'm about to tell you something, and that's part of what it is. The bloodlines, we're printed out of a 5D mind computer system, like a helmet, God helmet that God puts on. The universe is a God helmet for God. And the dreams that come out of that are equative outlines, platform systems to then kind of grow data like a substrate through, which we experience as time and experiences. The blood types are a time scale register, a blockchain time stamp. I can't think of the word. Time imprint or whatever, time code. And they exhibit the exact order of creation of humanity in hyperspace, meaning space is like a pyramid. The bloodlines are lined up in there because they were given birth to out of the mind, helmet, God thing in an order, like it's printed out of a machine. That doesn't mean we're 3D printed. It means it's super hard to comprehend just because it's not what we think. When the clock hits a certain hour, it buzzes a certain color, and that color is the essence that creates the certain bloodline of that people in simplistic terms. And so the knowledge that is, and as time occurs, it happens first to one and then the other. We're all mixed up in the world, so it just looks like a merry-go-round or a gravitron where all the people are kind of put in different positions. It looks like a random happening. It looks like not chaos, kind of chaos, but it looks random. It looks randomized. What if it was all perfectly in order? And again, not linear because that's slightly different, but a quantum sense where one has a larger fractal envelope capacity to absorb that true quantum total whole, and it is like an undulating something raining down, and we experience it in that kind of an order of format, not necessarily one and then the other. We experience the universe in a different format according to the bloodlines or the blood types and bloodlines as well. Thank you to fuck. Sorry. To fuck is going on. Sorry. That's his name. I think I'm going to screenshot that. Almighty High returns. Leyline energy transference is the issue. These buildings must come down. That will be handled. If they come down, where are they going to go, or where are we going to go? So it's like, can we do something to reformat this system to change everything? If we format the energy on the next octave, it's like using spiritual 5G instead of Wi-Fi. Excuse me. And it is a completely different format. It doesn't need... It's not susceptible to the same limitations. It's like using cell phone network versus Wi-Fi, put it that way. And you can set up your Wi-Fi link to any hard line and then have a system from there, and so it makes it so much more customizable. Basically, if with the other way, in either cell phone or hard line, but the old systems that drug cartels in Mexico have their own networks of, literally like $1 million networks of, because they can set them up. You just need towers and infrastructure. It would be like having those systems and in earlier times, and ultimately we can be abused, you can be manipulated, things can be recorded, things can be done, and you don't even know because you don't have access to checking those things, or just you don't have the same level of informational and energy transference as the people doing the manipulations. Once we get to a level where we're beginning to decentralize even everything, not everything, we're decentralizing what they used against us so that they can't use it against us. And in doing that, we move to the next level of what that is capable of, and it's like upgrade, which is just weird, but it's kind of like looking at like puberty, and you're like, what is the fuck is going on? And like, this is an upgrade. Well, maybe in a few years it'll make sense. And again, if we all resonate, this cymatic, collective makes sense, it has to make sense. If we don't want it to make sense because we're resonating that it's not going to. Our Gonzalez, yes, thank you. Melvie, that's better. It's louder now. This means I just turned the mic on. Wow, I'm like way back in time. Okay, I may be letting this one conclude itself. Where are we at? Yeah, it's an hour and 4. Okay, I'll be back on later or something. Sorry, I was tired for a while and going through certain things. And I didn't know what would be the best thing to do. I will definitely come around again. Thank you all so very much. Much love and knowledge, if capable and beneficial. Sorry for moving so slowly in these times. Thank you all so very much.